Welcome to the Disrupt Education Podcast 2024. That makes me feel old, Allie. How you doing?
I don't know if it makes me feel old. I like
up.
the New Year's time.
You're the youngest one in the room right now.
True, but I'm not like, 22.
True. All right. 28.
Close. New Year's, like, I've never been like a big resolution person, but mostly because it's like I think it's important to kind of refresh at different times of the year, but there is this like kind of sense of wonder. And I mean, maybe not everyone will agree with me, but the cold, dark January is a really good time to like imagine. And students usually make tons of gains in this time because there's nothing else to do, or there's not as much to do.
Yeah.
So it's a good time to be like academically focused or career focused, or kind of like just kind of renew and refresh. So we're excited to open up the podcast with some new energy and new direction, and I'm very excited for this episode. It's not someone I've previously met, but has been on the podcast before. So Don, welcome to the Disrupt Education Podcast.
Hello.
We're coming out firing. Don Wettrick is with us. I don't know when we met, maybe a year and a half ago.
It's been more than that.
I don't know.
It's been more than that. Yeah.
The CEO and founder of StartEdUp and the StartEdUp Foundation. You're an author, you're a speaker. I didn't realize you wrote the book about 20%, maximizing 20%. But that was a really kind of okay-ish intro, man. Can you are we on par there for your intro?
I actually hate intros because I don't know. I don't like talking about what we had done. I'm really excited about what we're starting and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's plenty for me.
Yeah, well, I have to add the Gary V of education, the true Gary V of education. Just got to add that, so I can tag Gary V on here again.
I'll take that. Interestingly enough, that's how I discovered who he was, is that I had, and this was early, this is like 8 or so years ago. People were like, you're like Gary V. And I was like, who is that? And then I was like, I watched some of his stuff and I was both flattered and like, I don't cuss that much, right?
Drop that many F-bombs.
Right. I try not to.
So we got 2024 ahead of us, closed out 2023. Since we last talked, we'll stick on that going forward piece. You've changed kind of your role a little bit more, and actually have traveled a lot more and opened up a lot more opportunities for everybody in education, for that matter. Maybe give some quick highlights that you've done, and just some quick highlights in the past year, where you're going in 2024.
So run Innovate Within, which at the time is Indiana's innovation entrepreneurship program and competition. And actually before that was a classroom teacher, had a really strange class called Innovation and Open Source Learning. We basically took the 20% time model, but made it a class and made it its own thing. And standing on the shoulders of student giants, the students did things like really cool things, get some patents. We had some businesses launched, and it really didn't start off as an entrepreneurial venture until it became one, because we're like, this is a really cool idea. And it's a cool idea for more than my classroom. And so flash forward to, we started this thing, the pitch competition for Indiana. And it then grew and scaled to be the biggest in the country. We're proud of that. Therefore, to answer your question, we've been asked by a couple of other states, and then more interestingly, other countries. Strange. I don't mean strange. Countries I wasn't really considering. They weren't on my bingo card of, hey, we need our students to start thinking this way, because we have some opportunities coming up, and if we don't act on them, all the entrepreneurship is going to be stolen from the West. One of our things that we did, we have an alumni association. So we had this really unique opportunity to go out to Italy and work with the Italian Motor Valley companies. The Italian Motor Valley companies are all car companies in N&I. So Lamborghini, Ferrari, Pagani, Maserati, Ducati. Again, everything ends in I. And then also that, and then it's just kind of opened up to other relationships. And what I still thought was Czech Republic, but it's called Czechia, Romania. Yeah, just things, Moldova, strange kind of occurrences. And so and we also got this really cool relationship with this thing called Global Entrepreneurship Network, and trying to get some things going there. But at the end of the day, we don't really like to talk about entrepreneurship first. We like to say we first want to get students to see a problem as an opportunity, which is entrepreneurship. Sure. Like entrepreneurs just listen to people complain and go, okay, I'm onto something, and trying to get more of that mindset and education as a baby step. And then if you want to start leveling up, getting kids resources and mentors and opportunities to do that.
I don't know that I've heard that entrepreneurship described as like just getting people to see a problem as an opportunity. And so I really like that phrase one. But it leads me to kind of like my first question around what your maybe role is, or how you kind of help people get there is. I think sometimes it's easier to identify problems versus solutions or opportunities, and that's across the board, worldwide. So if you can solve a problem, you can make a lot of money. But in terms of education, what do you see, or what have you seen with people getting wrong with entrepreneurship and innovation?
That they first start off by calling it entrepreneurship. A lot of kids right now, I'm not going to go down my rabbit hole of what they think is wrong about capitalism, but capitalism and entrepreneurship isn't on the high priority list for Z's, right? And yet, and this is my gateway into their world. A lot of times I'll go into, by the way, I love my new role now. I miss the classroom, but I've transitioned to like a grandparent role. I get to play with the kids. I just don't have to put them to sleep. So I get to go to a lot of classrooms all over, and they don't have to grade anything, which is awesome. But my intro is a lot of times I'm like, hey, who's your favorite entrepreneur? And so they give me the classics, right? Elon, Jeff, the common people. I said, man, I think my favorite entrepreneur right now is Mr. Beast. And they go, whoa. And they're like, yeah, I guess he is an entrepreneur. And so that opens up their mind, because one, he's the kind of guy. So like some of the entrepreneurs that people don't like is that they made it all about themselves. And so I go, okay. I said, like, I think that entrepreneurs solve problems. And I go, question, what problem is Mr. Beast solving? For those of you that don't know, Mr. Beast got started off. He was a Twitch streamer, among other things. He streamed. He would do dumb challenges. He would raise some money, then he'd give his monies away. He's done a lot now, and he's gotten such a huge audience, and now he's giving away a massive amount of things. He's drilling for water. He's getting people free surgery for glaucoma. He's doing thousands of things. But I said, what problem is he solving? And some of the students were like, well, he's helping end blindness, or he's helping people get water. And I said, dig deeper. And then finally this kid answered. I could have, like, I wish I would have had a gift card. He said, actually, he is solving the problems that influencers are assholes.
Nice.
And I'm like, say it again. And so he said, well, my parents don't like some of the influencers that a lot of people my generation likes. He is the exact opposite of anybody with the last name of Paul, Jenner, or Kardashian. Wow. And I was like, you win, kid, because that's exactly it. He is solving the problem of narcissistic influencers. Jimmy's not a good-looking guy. He's just a guy. He's a cool guy. And so he is monetized nice. And so that, I think that education could take a page right out of Jimmy's book, is that he now literally picks genres of who he wants to help, and he builds support around it. And so kids are like, well, all the money he makes, he gives away. Wrong. No. Like, I have a couple of Mr. Beast hoodies because I like what he does, so I want to support him. So when the kids realize that you can look at opportunities, whether that's in your school, in your town, on your commute back home, you're going to see some problems of like, man, somebody ought to do something about it. Somebody is you, and you could build a team and you could do something about it.
Mhm.
And then this is my little sound bitey thing that I'm telling students a lot. Actually, I should get it trademarked. And this one hurts. This was when the kids go, ooh. So this is one that's going to resonate with your students, I promise you. I said, successful people right now are always uploading. The rest of you scroll.
Mm-hmm.
And they go, like, dang, you got me. Successful people are uploading. The rest of us scroll. So one of the things that I've liked always, and apologies, Allie, we've just met, but like one of the things I've always liked about Pete is that Peter is making sure that he is constantly uploading stuff. He is talking about what he's doing in the classroom. That's winning. It's getting other people to see that. And so when I tell the students, I'm like, you don't have to be an influencer by uploading. What are you uploading? What are you working on? How are you inspiring others? How are you getting support? I think if education took a deeper look at that, of just seeing problems and opportunities and letting the kids have some time in the day to go like, what do you want to fix?
No, I really like that. And thank you. I'm humbled. Because some days, man, when you're creating, it's tough. I mean, it's not easy to constantly put content out there. And I think it was funny because you and I kind of reconnected around TikTok. I tried to avoid TikTok like the plague. And then I was like, and then some of my kids were, hey, Mr. H, there's a lot of people who listen to podcasts on TikTok. So why don't you? And that's all I needed. So they took the opportunity for that. So that was kind of funny. I did not expect you to be like, oh my gosh, I saw your stuff on TikTok. I'm like, does
I was so
Don
excited
have
that
like
you
a
did because you were
grandchild?
clipping it.
I don't,
Yeah, I mean, like, again, like Pete, we've had a very similar journey in the sense that, well, actually, the first time I did this thing with Microsoft, and there's this guy that said, I can't believe that I haven't seen you or your class on Twitter. I'm like, oh God, I'm not that kind of guy. Like, why would I be that narcissistic? He goes like, dude, other teachers can see it and see what your students are doing and maybe borrow something. And I'm like, huh. So yeah, I was really excited to see you had clips and things out there because, not going off on a tangent, but like the amount of things we complain about in education, the people that aren't in education complain about what we're not doing in education. You're like, all right, so the people that are doing cool stuff, you almost have borderline a moral obligation to say, all right, this is what I'm doing then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think it's important that more educators shine a light on the cool stuff they're doing. Now there's a downside to that. And there's, some other people in your building are like, oh, you're just showing off. And you're like, yeah, kind of showing off best practice. That's kind of my job. I'm supposed to. But anyway, that's for another episode.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I really like that because it is true. Look, man, I've been in the classroom for 22 years and working with, now I like how you call them the Z's, man, because, sometimes, they're sleeping on things. I'm like, wake up, man. So, but, through the generations of teaching, not only, I've taught Gen Xers, I've taught millennials and now Z's. But it's so interesting to keep up and to try to see what do they see and empathize with them. And so you say, you get to be, the fun uncle going into classrooms and different areas of the places where you've established or worked with people in your organization. What are you looking forward to this year and maybe some of the things that they're going to start in 2024?
Yeah, I think the stretch goal is 5,000 students go through for the Indiana one. Mm-hmm. And just with each passing year, I'm like, no way. The level of sophistication is getting so high. I think one thing we pride ourselves with our comp is that actually when I was first asked to do that, I and I'm not trying to be snarky or mean, but I'll see other youth Shark Tanks and they say something very aspirational, like, I want to end world hunger by an app that I don't know how to write. Mm-hmm. Through our process, we are so methodical and start with an MVP of something that we have had. I'm just with each year, I'm like, well, this will be our high water mark. It's never going to get better than that team. Or like, okay, now that it's never going to be better than that one. It's gotten insane. Now, the downside of that thing that I'm afraid of is that we've had some schools that have gotten like scared off or intimidated. They're like, we can't win. I'm like, but your football team still plays knowing that they're not going to be in the championship. Like and that's also one of the things that we're so determined on getting so many incentives by just going through it. We have a lot of universities are sponsoring this. Even for round one, there's scholarships involved. So that's the good and the bad. So I'm looking forward to like even more increased. You've got to be kidding me. You need to get a patent on that kind of thing. And just the kids who are like, they just now got this big idea. It's not as sophisticated, but they're at least in that process of going, all right. Matter of fact, a quick story tell. One of my favorite things that happened, we got a video. So round one, we have so many, we have to have a video submission to get to the next round. And so I had this kid, very poor school. And, but you could tell he went through the curriculum. And in his video submission, he had this 1,000-yard stare because he goes, so I've been listening to people complain and I think that I'm onto something. I didn't care what the rest of the pitch was. He had that. I've been listening to people complain and I think that I'm onto something. I about cried listening to that. So getting those students to get that first taste of, I can do something about that. Is my favorite part.
Yeah.
What would you say is like the biggest problem you solve with StartEdUp?
I'm not going to try to embellish, although I had this conversation again. We just had, ironically enough, just today we had an event with the Indiana Pacers and the kids like the high end stuff. But some of the kids were talking like, this is great mental health. See a problem as an opportunity means you have ownership. It means like, okay, you're allowed to not like things in the world. What are you going to do? My proudest moments are the students that take command of something and go, this is my solution. Whether that is, we've had some things that are so practical. We had one student that, actually two girls that said, hey, no offense, we found out where the older people live. We talked to them. Every October, November, they don't want to get on the roofs and get out leaves from their gutter. We bought two, we charge $85 an hour. You're like that wasn't going to win, but you're like, they listen to older people complain and so they had flyers of what an ER visit would cost and how much cheaper they are.
Wow.
And then they said, some people said no because they weren't insured. And so they got some clients that said yes, they made some money, then they got insurance. So their costs were, we printed up flyers and only put them in the mailboxes where the older people lived. And then you have something where one of my favorite ideas, there was two girls that basically surveyed 8th grade girls. So they had an event that their driving force was Instagram causes girls depression and anxiety. And so the event that they did is they basically had a licensed therapist to go and do an event for free. Why? Because it was future leads for him. And that basically they had the girls talk about their emotions, their feelings as they were looking at their girls online. And so instead of like just face-to-face looking at each other, they had them do crafts. And so what they were really doing is they were making things that they could sell at a boutique. And so they netted thousands of dollars because the parents were, so they charged $25. They had 25 girls as an MVP. The parents were like, when are we going to do this again? And of course, the licensed therapist is like, thank you. I got a couple of sales leads. And quite frankly, it was just wholesome and nice. Their driving thing was Instagram causes problems and they rounded up some, it's stuff like that. Like that, they didn't have to create an app. They didn't have to petition the government. They're like, we're going to do an event. We put some flyers in the middle school and it sold out like that.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. That's my favorite stuff.
Yeah. And I get to teach, we call it entrepreneurship, don't hate. But like I get to teach students that it's very difficult to do that in a box, sometimes in the system. I'll share a quick story as well. And it kind of goes along with those two young ladies. It's a couple, one of the girls is in my class and another girl is not in the class, but they're going through college applications and the process is hell. I mean, it's hard. It's nerve-wracking. People don't understand it. She created a podcast And she was just like, I'm going to create a podcast and we're going to go do this. And of course, you know, she's trying to do everything else. So she's learning time management and all these different things in it. And I'm like, yeah, just log your journey. And then, like, guess what? I'll bet there's a couple of colleges and universities that want to sponsor this bad boy, you know, and there they go. They see it. But then you get the struggles of some kids who can't, like, they, again, what are your methods, or some of the people that have been in the program's methods of helping students see, first off, that they can do this, right? I like how you said, hey, you know what, you can look at the world with a pessimistic eye. That's okay, you know, because there's an opportunity. Building the confidence, because I get kids who are like, bam, they have the confidence, they're going to go. And then I get kids who are just like, they just don't have the confidence yet. How have you seen confidence, like, built to get those kids who maybe are just mindlessly scrolling and not going to make a move?
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, first of all, like, at scale, that's the harder thing, because I mean, like, individual success stories, we've got thousands of them. At scale, I think one of the keys is having them reach out. So we call it our macro and micro environments. So our macro environments is Indianapolis, Indiana. Identify some key companies or entities or nonprofits or churches you'd want to work with. And your micro network is, do you already know somebody? Is it Steve in accounting who lives 2 doors down? Or get on LinkedIn and see, is there anybody you're kind of connected with in that area? Because as us teachers know, if we're giving them advice like, oh, Mr. Wettrick, you're nice, you're supposed to say that. But when somebody at like Salesforce or Roche or Eli Lilly is like, kid, you're onto something, then, you know, it's kind of like being a parent, right? You know, your mom and dad tell you that stuff. So I think finding great mentors is great. And even, like, I'm trying to tell students, they have such an advantage over people that are adults, because successful people want to believe in the next generation. And so if they reach out and like, hey, I'm working on this thing, would you spend 15 minutes? There's a higher likelihood that they're going to say yes. So I think that's been a validator, that it lives and breathes outside my classroom, and more than, you know, Mr. H or Mr. Wettrick validating it helps.
Yeah.
So yeah. And quite frankly, I think one of our other driving principles was, I detested it when people were like, well, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I'm like, okay, then what's the answer? No people. Like, it's just that easy. You're like, well, it's not that easy. I'm like, yes, it is. I like, ironically enough, I had them read a chapter from 4 Hour Work Week, and Tim Ferriss had visited this class, and he had threw up this, you know, money challenge of who would get their person they wanted to work with to get back to him. And he says in the chapter, he's like, they didn't even try. And I'm like, then try, you know, like, it's not hard. And then even getting them to have the power of, I've got this weird time in class where we're supposed to reach out to people. They may say yes. One of the sneakiest things I ever did, I had a student that would ask people, and not like random people, but like trusted people. He asked them to be on his board of advisors of life. And he had different avenues, and it was a 10-year commitment, and you signed a thing. Nice. So he had spirituality, he had life lessons, he had parenting, like, and I was like, that's cool.
Yeah.
I would like for you to be on my board of advisors of life. Anyway, I love stuff like that. That is a big validator, and getting to build that network of like successful people.
I'm so excited that you're opening up 2024 for the podcast. And because when I think about Disrupt Education, is trying to highlight people, companies, programs in schools that are truly disruptive in the sense. I see the work that you're doing, and you're really trying to target a generation, but along with that comes communities and parents and teachers and school districts, and now apparently countries in Eastern Europe, right? Like, all over the place. But that speaks to it resonating with people. Sometimes though, like, I think students, you kind of alluded to this in some of your answers, they can be overwhelmed at the level that you're at. And teachers listening to this could be, feeling like, oh my gosh, like Don is just so far gone. And people, it's so easy to compare someone's like, your level 1 to their level 20. And it can be challenging, right? Like, and you're saying, oh, we're getting to the point with our youth Shark Tank where it can kind of intimidate students. What would you say to people who are feeling the pull to disrupt or innovate, in like encourage them for 2024?
I love this question. And Allie, I'm going to start with where you're at. So Pete's in the Chicago area. People expect cool things out of that area. You're in rural Wisconsin. Well, I was from Indiana, right? Sometimes what you think is a disadvantage is your advantage. And I'd also, I'm not just like shamelessly pandering to you too, but also like share your journey. When I tell the students, like winners upload, the rest of you scroll. If you're trying to do really cool things, showcase what your students are doing. Like they like it as a validator. Like, hey, you're never gonna now, mind you, you're playing favorites, or you didn't mention all the kids. Hey, man, winners get the accolades. And so if you're sharing some of the amazing things that your kids are doing and you didn't feature everybody, it's because you didn't do anything good. Like I love you and you got your C, but like I featured that because that's game breaking. That creates this environment and this culture in your classroom that like, and parents love that. Like you featured my daughter's idea or what we're working on, or even if it's a class project that is trying to make a dent in your community, a church or whatever, you just share it, man. Because even because you're right, Allie. I had a couple people, they're like, well, I couldn't do that because I don't have friends like, and they named some people we've done something. I started off with no one. We just happened to have our students reach out and say, y'all are cool. Could you help? So anybody, and I think that it's an advantage of like, hi, we're in the middle of Wisconsin and we're going to do this. And I think people are like, that's freaking cool, man. So, and then quite frankly, like if you're listening to this and you're not an educator, same thing, like upload your journey and see where it lands. And also don't be mad if no one responds at first. You'll get there. If the results are there, you're going to get noticed.
I love that with students. They're like, yeah, I reached out. How many times? Once. And they didn't respond. I'm like, take a look at your own email. There's like 4,000 emails in there you haven't even opened.
There's also kind of a trick. I'm not going to say which pro athlete it was because I don't want to bother this person, but where it's asking a kid, who would you want to reach out to? And he said this fairly famous athlete. And I said, why do you want to talk to him? He goes, oh, I just understand what it took, like what kind of training it would take to get to his level. And I said, then do you need to really ask him or do you need to ask his trainer? The person that he wanted to talk to really wasn't him. And by the way, this person has so many millions of fans online. He's not going to see your request. Mm-hmm. You research who his trainer is. You know how many requests his trainer gets?
Yeah.
And the likelihood of, I'm not going to say his name, the greater likelihood of that trainer saying it to the famous NBA player, you got to meet this kid, is at least better than 0. 100%. So even that of like doing some research, I want to talk to Peyton Manning because he overcame a neck injury. Call his neck surgeon.
Right.
Much likelihood. Yeah.
I mean, he's probably getting like a lot of clients, but he's not getting high school kids. I need to interview you, right?
But think how cool that is. I mean, Allie, if all of a sudden if a student reached out to her like, hey, I've been researching totally kick butt teachers, and it seems like I've done some digging into you, and you're totally awesome. Can I talk to you? Automatically, you're like, well, I am pretty good. I mean, and yes, the answer is going to be yes. So I reach out to those people, man.
Yeah, 100%. So you've scaled obviously outside of Indiana. What would you like to see? You work primarily with high school students, or do you go younger?
Starting to go younger.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wanted to focus my question around like high schoolers, and high school in general, right? I think the cliff is happening. You're getting a lot of lot of kids with chronic absenteeism is huge, but not a lot of people are talking about this, but it's out there, right? But again, let's look at this as an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
We have more double digits kids in our school that just don't show up. They're not necessarily not doing the work though, which is interesting. Because of a lot of stuff online now, and I can talk to a kid through technology or whatnot. What would you like to see the biggest thing happen in a high school system? I know it's like Indiana and Illinois are very different, but like across the nation, like what would you like to see as one major thing happen in 2024 to kind of scale out to that maybe high schoolers, maybe federal education or even states, boards of education would kind of realize and maybe start looking at this to do in high school?
Yeah, I mean, so like I said this earlier, and this goes even more so. It depends on whether you want it to be at scale for all, or to run some trials and trial some things and let it grow. Like I remember like the Genius Hour movement, it started really well. And instead of the principal saying, y'all are going to do Genius Hour, she aligned a second, third, fourth, and fifth grade teacher to do it just within their grade. And then the other teachers that didn't want to do it after a couple of years were like, that's cool. So I'm going to answer it in a small scale way and possibly look at it at a bigger level. Yeah. But I'll answer this. So I was at, for better or for worse, I deal with a lot of policy and politics stuff now. And so there was this Tech Hubs initiative, and they're talking about building these more centers of innovation and more opportunities for collaboration, all this other stuff. And I said during that meeting, I said, I just want you all to know, and by the way, I was the only educator there. And I said, I just want you all to know that there is a solution center. There is a innovation center. There is a co-working space in every town in America, and it's already been paid for. You don't need to have any more bricks or mortar. It's called your local high school. I said, if you had at least one class to work with your local mayor on real issues in that town, and you harness that talent, you would get so much stuff done. The city doesn't need to pay a branding expert ever again. The city doesn't need to call for proposals from people charging a lot of money on the stuff, the talent that your high school has right now. And I had people go, like, it's already been paid for, kids. Now, mind you, that starts off if you had a class like what you guys have, whether you called it innovation, entrepreneurship, whether you called it civic learning. Sometimes we call it a senior capstone. But if you took that for real, you're onto something. And I'll say this, the one thing that we've done, so we have a tripod of things within our system. I have a teacher fellowship where we find about 35 to 40 teachers like you guys. We put them in this innovation consortium. I bring in money to pay teachers more, but there is a hotline between you and your mayor. Because we have discovered, and we have the data to back it up, great teachers have more to do with economic development than anybody ever guessed. And not in they got a great grade and they got to go to a decent college. I'm talking like, dude, some of these students at least MVP things from Pete's class, and then he went to here. When you start looking at the longitudinal data, you're like, holy dude. So that mayor should be worshiping what you guys do. Sometimes they don't even know you exist. Because they're busy, they're in politics. And that's why we started this teacher fellowship. So we find 35 to 40 different teachers every year. The ones that are really killing it, we have them come back as mentors. And those are the ones that are leading some of these international trips. So we're celebritizing great teachers to where at least at a local politic level, you're like, you better not lose Pete. You better not lose Allie. Because if you do, your town is going to suffer. And they're like, okay. And then the other part of this is this alumni association that if they've done something, the state wants to use them as ambassadors. I shouldn't say use them. They want to harness them as ambassadors. So to answer your question in a shorter way, see the high school as the solution center for your town.
Yes.
It's been paid for, man. Now, mind you, here's the difference. And I'm quoting one of my favorite authors, Seth Godin. All education can be boiled down to two things: solving interesting problems and the leadership to get it done.
Yeah.
So if the kids treat it like a class exercise and it's crap product, then it dies.
Mm-hmm.
But if you give them the social pressure, if your mayor goes in there like, seriously, we're going to do this. We got $3 million budget and y'all better figure it out. Your kids are going to rise to the occasion.
Yep.
Allie didn't know what she was
affirms-
doing. Pete, sorry.
No.
We should have given her a disclaimer. I go off the rails. Sorry. I'm a little long on the answers.
This is 2024, man. This is how we start it. Let's go.
We like this. We like the Gary V of education, aka Don Wettrick, opening up 2024. Spicy.
I mean,
it's
Gary
good.
V is really the Don Wettrick of marketing. Let's be honest.
Gary's anyway. Yeah.
Confirms a lot of the 2023 guests that we ended up talking to, and so many of them were people who either help local communities invest in their local community, or they are like hands on the ground, boots on the ground in their local communities, doing that grassroots building up. And we've definitely mentioned the power of seeing a local problem and solving that. And so for you to have built and continue to build networks around that area is super affirming. And I know our listeners are going to love hearing this from you as we open up this year with this episode.
Yeah.
Well, look for those opportunities, man. I think that's the other thing that we started off a lot of school years with is that, by the way, this is also a funny joke that I get to tell. I asked kids, I said, I've stopped asking kids what they love or what they're passionate about because no one wants to take that risk.
Mm-hmm.
But they always tell you what they hate. Because I go, for example, does anybody really want to tell me what their favorite band is? And I said, no one does, but everybody dogs on Nickelback.
Yep.
So hilarity ensues. But I'm like, it's true. It's an emotional risk to tell you what you're passionate about. You're like, fine. What wrong do you see? What really makes you mad? Even if it's like, start with this room or the school. Well, the school lunch or blah, 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 or passing periods. They get into that flow. You're like, all right, simple, do that. Today because we were at the Pacers Fieldhouse thing, a couple things we asked them to just give us some, what is an improvement on, or how would you disrupt this industry? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden we took something so mundane that all of a sudden they're like, actually, this is a good idea. Within those constraints, they got creative as heck. And those kind of warm-up exercise, again, I get it again, Pete. I'm going off the rails. Questions.
No, but it's possible. That's, I think, one of the things that we want to take away from this podcast is it is possible. And even for educators out there, we crab a lot as educators. I'll even tell you, right? Like there'll be days where you're just like, and for God's sake, I don't even go in the lunchroom for crying out loud. But if you go in the lunchroom, you could, but that's all it's an opportunity. And I think this is perfect to start off a year for those who go out and this is my New Year's resolution or whatever. In education, whether you're in a school or around kids or even learning, a lifelong learner, I think we all are ourselves. There's so much opportunity if we just flip that switch, like you're saying, Don, is okay, there's a problem. Let's come up with a couple of solutions and play, and that to me is so refreshing. I think that so many of our listeners and educators can really kind of take that and run with it in 2024. Before we ask you for your information and how people connect with you, I always got to ask Allie, okay, this is your final thoughts on the first episode of 24. What are you taking away? I know you got a lot of writing there.
I know. I had so much. I was like, there's so many notes here. I think the piece that kind of hit me the most, and it's not something that I've heard shared on the podcast, is don't talk to the person you idolize. Find their trainer, find their surgeon, find the people that are supporting them, because they probably have more time, resources. And so it's like, it kind of goes to this idea, like, right, don't go to the mayor, but go to like the project managers, or or like the principal's probably bogged down, but the assistant principals might have more time or openness to hear your project, or just get creative with who you talk to or try and work with, and like recognize capacity. So right, if you're trying to do something and you're getting no's, you just haven't met the right person, or like the right way to pitch it to get the capacity built for it. So I think there's this opportunity there that we haven't necessarily heard that perspective on the podcast. So thank you, Don, for sharing that.
I got about 2,000 ideas right now that just came to me. So, Don, thank you so much again for taking time out. How can people connect with you and the organization, man?
I probably live more on LinkedIn than anything else. I some of the other social media apps are just, I don't like politics anymore. So LinkedIn, Don Wettrick, StartEdUpFoundation.org is our nonprofit side. We're meeting with some other governors, and so if you're at a state that we're considering, let us know. And then lastly, I want to say this. If you're a teacher listening to this, and I'll start with both of you, Allie and Pete, let your students know the opportunity they have and the regret that they may have. I had some students that saw where this was going, and they were shamelessly asking for introductions. And some of the students that didn't, that coasted because it didn't seem like a hard class, they have regret. The opportunities you guys have in front of you, and if you're a teacher, that you're creating this kind of culture, play this for them. Let me know. I'll happily call into your classroom. Same thing, Allie and Pete, I'd happily tell your students, you can take advantage of the most precious thing you have right now, which is time and the resources and the introductions that you guys can provide. Or you may look at this 5 years from now and go, why didn't I take advantage of that? When I said earlier, we had no idea how much economic impact and how much great teachers beyond the classroom, how much they drove economic impact. I salute the people that are doing things that they're not doing this for the sake of school. They're doing this because it's great. And so I miss the classroom. I've got some guilt issues that that I left right before COVID, and I didn't know COVID was going to be a thing. But my deepest care in the world, and if you're an educator listening to this, man, let us know how we can help. I salute you, and let your students know that the things that you're providing are going to be game changing if they want it to be.
100%. Again, thank you, Don, for hanging out with us today. We'll put all your connects up in the show notes. Here we go, 2024. For Allie Privet, I'm Peter Hostrasser. Thank you all for hanging out with us. It's going to be a great year. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrasser or Allie Privet.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.